So watch how easy it is to roll this. We're just flying along like normal.
Yep. Oh, for goodness sake. That's ridiculous. That's... I love that, Greg. That's the best.
Hi, I'm Tony Purser. I spent over 10 years as a commercial photographer and videographer. I'm also a private pilot. If you'd like to find out how you can record your flights, including both the video and the audio, you've come to the right place. There are lots of good reasons to record your flights. If you're a student pilot, you might want to review your last lesson so that you can find out what you did right and wrong. If you're an instructor, you could supplement your in-cockpit training with online videos. Maybe you got a chance to fly a cool airplane and you want to document that once-in-a-lifetime experience. Or you might be just like me and simply want to share the beauty of the world as it looks from up in the air. There are 5 main types of cameras you can use, and there are advantages and disadvantages to each of these options. The most common choice is an action camera from a company like GoPro, Insta360, or DJI. Action cameras offer a dramatically wide field of view, which is great for capturing the overall scenery. But this can also be a disadvantage if you want to capture close-up details. The sensors in action cameras are quite small, so they don't perform well in low light, making them a poor choice for capturing your night flights. 360 cameras are unique because they capture absolutely everything in a full 360-degree sphere. There's no need to frame your shot at the time of capture. It's possible to extract multiple views from a single clip. In this way, you can simulate having multiple cameras with just one 360 camera. Plus, you can export the same clip in both horizontal and vertical formats for use on various social media platforms. Like action cameras, there are a multitude of mounting options, both inside and out. But these cameras are not as robust. Their lenses stick out, so they're easy to damage. Plus, there's always some sort of post-processing required to reframe the footage. This step can be quite time-consuming, and it will tax the processing capabilities of older computers. Although advertised as having 8K resolution, this is for the entire 360 spherical image. Once you crop in to reframe the footage, you will end up with a much lower resolution. This can lead to disappointing image quality. Again, the relatively small sensors on these cameras make them a poor choice for use at night. A mobile phone is a great option because there's no additional cost since you already own it. Conveniently, there's also no need to download the videos from a separate camera memory card because they're already stored on your device. Phones are also a great handheld option when used by your passenger or a non-flying pilot. They can also be attached to the inside of a window with an inexpensive suction cup mount for hands-free recording. Remember that some mobile phones are equipped with a variety of lenses, enabling you to capture wider views or to zoom in to capture details. Also, some of the most recent iPhones offer ProRes recording, which allows you to capture a very flat image that allows lots of flexibility to adjust during post-processing. Mobile phones are not a practical option to mount on the outside of the aircraft, which limits their overall versatility. Their image stabilization works very well for handheld shots, but it sometimes struggles with mechanical vibrations when attached to a window. Of course, an iPad or other tablet can also be used, although they usually lack the wide variety of lenses available on mobile phones. While they're a bit clumsy to use in a small cockpit, they can still produce great images. Mirrorless cameras allow you to zoom in to capture details in the landscape, as well as other aircraft when formation flying. Many have in-body or lens-based image stabilization, which can help eliminate vibrations. Their larger sensors, along with the ability to use extremely fast wide aperture lenses, make them an excellent option for low light or nighttime flying. Of course, they're too big to be practical to mount on the aircraft, which limits them to handheld use by passengers or non-flying pilots. Finally, you can use drones to capture some very unique perspectives. Of course, they're dangerous to use around airports and are often restricted from even taking off in these areas. But when used in a remote area, along with careful coordination with the pilots of other aircraft, they can capture some amazing scenes. Remember, nothing is stopping you from using more than one of these camera types in your video, or even all of them. Having multiple views, both inside and out, as well as some establishing shots that give an overview of the setting, can make your videos visually more interesting. Cutting between the various views allows you to hide jump cuts and can imply the passage of time, especially with time-lapse videos. Okay, let's dig into the various camera mounting options, both inside and outside the aircraft. Before doing that, I want to stress that recording your flight should never compromise the safe operation of your aircraft. The old saying, aviate, navigate, communicate, does not mention generate content. Always fly the airplane. With that out of the way, let's discuss mounting options. The most common way is to attach the camera to the window of the plane with a suction cup mount. Some brands I've used include GoPro, Ram, and Panavice. They all rely on a difference in air pressure to work. Of course, as we all learned in ground school, the air pressure in the cockpit will vary depending on the altitude you're flying at, as well as the ambient air temperature. This change in air pressure can cause cheap suction cup mounts to fail. Some designs feature a small pump with a handy reference line that shows if you need to top up the suction. Various versions allow you to mount just about any type of camera, including GoPro finger or buckle mounts, standard 1/4 20 threaded tripod screws, and adjustable mobile phone brackets. Depending on how you face the camera, you can capture either the interior of the cockpit or the exterior view out the window. Of course, with a 360 camera, you can capture both these views at the same time. For a more straight-on view, you can use a clip mount on the lip of the glare shield. GoPro makes a nice version, but it has a built-in magnet that's strong enough to seriously mess up the compass. I use a cheap third-party knockoff that seems to work well, and it lacks the magnet. It comes standard with GoPro fingers, but you can adapt other mounts, including 1/4 20 screw thread or a mobile phone mount. Again, you can capture interior and exterior views by simply turning the camera in each direction on the clip. I'm not a big fan of this perspective for the exterior shots because it tends to include so much of the cowling. A nicer perspective is available if you can mount the clip on one of the sun visors. You'll have to experiment a bit to find a position where the weight of the camera won't cause the sun visor to droop. GoPro makes adhesive mounts with flat and slightly curved bottoms. Adding one of the flat bottom mounts to the ceiling console can offer a great overview perspective, capturing both the instrument panel and the view out the front window. This is a great perspective for student pilots who want to review their lessons. Although it's not really a mounting option, it's worth mentioning that a passenger or non-flying pilot can handhold the cameras. On some aircraft, you can safely open the windows during flight. With a proper neck strap or wrist strap to prevent dropping the camera, you can get some pretty dramatic shots, all without the glare and reflections that come with shooting through the windows. This is an area where full-size mirrorless cameras excel, both for videos and photos. Okay, let's take a look at the three main options for mounting a camera outside of the aircraft. Before you attach anything, make sure you check with a local certified flight instructor or AME to see which type of mounts are legal in your particular situation. If your aircraft has a strut, it can be a sturdy place to mount your camera. Various companies make temporary strut mounts. The two brands I've used are Flightcam and Rocksteady. If your airplane doesn't have a strut, then a tie-down ring on either the wing or the tail can be another secure option. Again, various companies make these. I've used models by MyPilot Pro and Rocksteady. Temporary mounts like these are great for rental or flying club aircraft. For more permanent installations, you can also get commercial mounts that attach to inspection plates. I've seen models by InFlightCam and Rocksteady. Note that there can be vibration issues with these particular mounting points due to the skin of the aircraft flexing. This can give you jello-looking videos. InFlightCam also makes several mounts that attach with machine screws. These include 1 and 2 screw options. In the more risky category for exterior mounts are GoPro sticky mounts. A lot of pilots won't use them on the outside of the aircraft due to the danger of the adhesive failing or the plastic mount cracking. I have used them in the past and I've never had one fail, but I do agree that they're a more risky option. If you do want to use them, make sure the surface you mount them to is free of dirt or grease. Also, allow the adhesive to cure for at least 24 hours before mounting your camera. Do not use a suction cup mount on the outside of an aircraft. The only exception might be for ground-based operations like a slow taxi back to the hangar. Finally, take time to consider the framing of your shot when mounting a camera externally on the plane. If it's out near the tip of the wing, the fuselage of the aircraft will appear smaller, allowing more framing options. If it's mounted closer to the root, on a strut or a tie-down ring, the body of the aircraft will appear much larger, so you'll want to turn the camera away from it a bit so it doesn't dominate the entire frame. Note that objects that are close to cameras equipped with wide-angle lenses appear really big. This applies to action cameras and is especially true for 360 cameras. Try to avoid a framing that includes a nearby wing or strut, otherwise your image is going to consist of mainly a big chunk of unchanging metal. One way of doing this is to use a slight extension pole to move the camera farther away from the strut. Of course, you have the option of framing your shot in such a way that none of the aircraft is visible, but this tends to lose some context, making it less of a flying video and more of a landscape video. I've shot some videos with the GoPro pointing straight down. It's a unique perspective, but I've also had some viewers complain that it's somewhat vertigo-inducing. A key advantage of using a 360 camera is that it allows you to adjust the framing after the fact. Okay, let's switch gears and talk about something that will make a much bigger difference to your videos than the type of equipment you use: the weather. That's right, the weather has an enormous impact on how your videos look. Dull, overcast days will lead to flat, dull-looking videos due to a lack of contrast. Conversely, bright, sunny days will produce crisp-looking videos because the hard lighting creates shadows that outline all the little details in the scene. Sunny days also supply more light to the sensor, so it performs better. The direction of light is also important. Generally speaking, front lighting works best. If possible, try to shoot in the opposite direction from the sun. The one obvious exception is if you want to capture a sunrise or sunset, but other than that, you'll get better results in the opposite direction. Shooting toward the sun tends to create a lot of glare and wash out the image, which results in lower contrast and muted colors. This makes for a less attractive video. No matter which type of camera you're using, you must get the camera settings dialed in correctly if you want the final video to look good. On a sunny day, I use the following settings. Manually set the white balance to 5500K, which is the correct setting for daylight conditions. If you leave the camera set to auto white balance, it will constantly change the color temperature, basically the warmth of the image. This can make it hard to cut between individual scenes because they'll all have a slightly different color cast. Do yourself a favor and manually set it to 5500K on a sunny day. For daytime flights, set the ISO value to 100. For cameras that have a minimum and a maximum ISO setting, set them both to ISO 100. This will give you the cleanest, low-noise image with the greatest dynamic range possible for daytime flights. On a cloudy day, you could increase the white balance to around 6,500K to keep the image from looking too cold. I would also use a setting of 6,500K for sunrise and sunset shots to retain the nice warm colors in the sky. For night flights, where the scene is dominated by artificial lighting, I would set the white balance to a much cooler 4,000K. Set the ISO minimum value to ISO 100 and the maximum value to no more than ISO 800. That covers everything from a video perspective, but professional filmmakers will tell you that audio is equally important, or perhaps even more important. So let's switch gears and discuss some of the ways you can record audio on your flights. Unfortunately, there's so much noise in the cockpits of most GA aircraft that it's not really practical to capture conversations. You can get around the entire issue by simply ignoring the audio capture entirely and using a music track instead. This is certainly a popular option on platforms like TikTok and Instagram Reels, since it's so easy to select an appropriate song to add to any videos you upload. If you want to include radio communications that occurred during your flight,
Stay on that heading. We're going to go and we're going to pass on your same side there.
you will need to get an adapter cable. The cables are simply Y-shaped splitters that go between the phono plug on your headset and the aircraft headset socket. Various versions of the cables have different plugs for GA, helicopters, etc. Most of the cables have a 3.5 millimeter plug which you would plug into your camera or audio recorder. Note that there are two different 3.5 millimeter plugs available, TRS and TRRS. The TRS cables have three metal contacts, a tip, a ring, and a sleeve. They work with full-size mirrorless cameras and most audio recorders, as well as the audio adapters for action cameras. The TRRS cables have four metal contacts, a tip, a ring, another ring, and a sleeve. They work with smartphones and tablets that still have a 3.5 millimeter jack, or via a USB-C to 3.5 millimeter TRRS adapter cable for newer phones. If you get the wrong plug, it'll fit, but it won't work. Each camera is a little different as far as what it requires to support an external audio feed. Some of the very first GoPros used a simple mini USB cable to add a 3.5 millimeter audio jack. Those were the good old days. By the time the Hero 5 came along, GoPro had switched to a much more expensive and bulky USB-C adapter, which is still used to this day. The product is called the Pro 3.5mm mic adapter. Later, with the arrival of the Hero 9, they offered a media mod, which supplied a 3.5mm external audio input. If you have a modern GoPro, you'll need one of these two adapters if you want to record headset audio. Insta360 have their own series of USB-C to 3.5mm audio adapters. There are specific models for the Ace Pro, X3, and the X4, and different ones for the One RS. Of course, they're not compatible with one another. DJI have 3.5mm adapters for the Osmo Action, as well as others. Recording the headset audio directly to your camera is the easiest option because the audio and video will be synchronized. But there's another option. You can use a separate audio recorder instead. This can be handy if you don't have a 3.5mm audio adapter for your camera. These days, I'd recommend using the standalone DJI Mic 2 transmitter. Although it's normally used as a wireless transmitter, it can also record up to 14 hours of high-quality 32-bit float audio internally without any other receiver. In the past, I've even used an old iPhone I had kicking around. It dates back to when Apple still included a 3.5mm headphone jack in their phones. In this case, I needed to use a cable with a TRRS connection. By using the built-in Voice Memos application, it becomes a dedicated audio recorder. Then I can just airdrop the recording to my computer or any other Apple device after the flight is finished. If you're shooting with multiple cameras, you can sync up the footage with the classic hand clap technique. This gives you a distinct visual and audio reference point to align all the clips during post-processing. Next, let's take a few minutes to talk about some typical problems you might encounter and how to fix them. For anything other than a short training flight, you're going to have some concerns about the battery life of your camera. For cameras mounted inside the aircraft, there's the possibility of simply swapping batteries, assuming you have extras. But doing this can be a distraction when you should be fully focused on flying the aircraft. A better solution is to use a USB power cable connected to either a portable power bank or the accessory plug on your aircraft, assuming it has one. Most cameras allow you to power them in this way. If you're using a 3.5mm audio adapter on your camera, these accessories are usually designed to allow a USB power cable to be plugged in at the same time. You may have seen this weird effect with propeller-driven aircraft. It occurs because video cameras record each frame as a progressive series of scan lines. Although the scan happens within a fraction of a second, the propeller is also spinning very fast, so the blades are in a different position by the end of the scan. The effect can be distracting in the final video. You can minimize it by forcing the shutter to stay open longer, thereby blurring the propeller as it turns. First, change the ISO setting on your camera to its lowest value, usually 100 ISO. Next, you need to install an ND filter, also called a prop filter, over the front of the lens. These come in various strengths or darknesses. The darker glass will trick the camera into thinking it's not as bright outside, so it will leave the shutter open longer, which will blur the moving propeller. These filters are readily available for all types of cameras. You can adapt standard circular ND filters to mobile phones and action cameras. Or, for GoPro cameras with removable front lens covers, you can get custom square filters. The only exception is 360 cameras, since there's not a practical way to attach a flat filter to the bulbous lenses. On bright days, you might have problems matching the brightness between the interior and the exterior of the aircraft. If you expose for the exterior view, you'll end up with a dark control panel, making it hard to see the instruments. Or, if you expose for the control panel, you end up with an ugly, washed-out exterior view. This is an area where setting your camera to 10-bit or HDR mode can help. A better solution is to use a graduated ND filter, also known as a split ND or gradient ND filter. By placing the darkest part over the exterior view and the clear part over the instrument panel, you can reduce the dynamic range in the scene, making it easier for the camera to capture the overall range of brightnesses. I have a couple of these square filters for my GoPro cameras, but they're not that easy to find online. You can also make your own DIY version by using a standard 52mm circular camera filter and an adapter to attach it to the front of a GoPro. If you attach your action camera to the underside of the wing or to a sticky mount on the ceiling console, you might end up with upside-down videos because the camera's mounted upside down. You can fix upside-down videos after the fact. On a Mac, you have a couple of options. Open the video with the QuickTime player. Click Edit, Rotate Right. Do this a second time to rotate it a full 180 degrees. Or you can use the Finder. Right-click on the video file and select Quick Actions, Rotate Left. Do it a second time and the video will be right way up. Occasionally, your camera will simply stop recording. You can minimize these problems by taking a few simple precautions. First, make sure you're using a high-quality memory card from a well-known manufacturer. I've had very good luck with cards from SanDisk, Lexar, and Samsung. There are a ton of fake counterfeit cards on the market. The best way to ensure you're getting a legitimate card is to purchase it directly from a large, well-known retailer such as Amazon or Best Buy. Memory card specifications are confusing, but there are only a few key ones you need to look for. First, be sure to purchase a card with at least a V30 speed class designation. This will guarantee that the card can keep up with the data rate required for high-resolution video recording. The capacity of the card will determine how long you can record. With 4K video, you'll get roughly an hour of recording for each 64 gigabytes. Personally, I use cards with 128 gigabytes or 256 gigabytes capacity, but 512 gig and 1 terabyte cards are also available. You can see a list of recommended cards on the various manufacturers' websites, including Insta360, DJI, and GoPro. If you're interested in finding out more about any of the products that I've mentioned in this video, you can find links in the description below.